Aggression toward family and caregivers in childhood and adolescence, what we'll be calling AFCCA in this video, is a pattern of behavior in childhood or adolescence characterized by aggressive behavior by a child or adolescent towards family members. It is not just the occasional temper tantrum or meltdown. It causes significant harm to the child themselves, the family members the behavior is directed towards, and those who witness it. It can commonly include angry or aggressive outbursts towards others, threatening or intimidating family members, aggressive body language and posturing, and causing property damage. It can also include aggressive language or swearing and psychological or emotional injury to others. These behaviors are most often directed towards parents, primary caregivers, and siblings. So, where exactly did the term AFCCA come from? It was created by a group of clinicians, researchers, professionals, and families and youth with lived and living experience. The purpose of coming up with this term was to have a way to talk about what was going on for families and to ensure that there was a common understanding among professionals as well. The hope was that the word would convey the severity of the issue while not stigmatizing the child who was displaying the behavior. Today, we will hear the story of a mother's experience of AFCA and how her culture and identity as a Black woman influenced her experience as a parent. You may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all of the world's problems at once. But don't ever underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. How would you describe AFCA, which stands for Aggression Towards Caregivers and Family in Childhood and Adolescence, as someone who experiences it in their home?
I think AFCA is definitely everything that shouldn't happen in the family. In your house, you're supposed to feel safe and comfortable, and AFCA definitely takes that away from you. And when it happens, it's really like there's this strange like parasites that takes over my child's body, and I don't recognize them anymore. And it's the most challenging part of parenting, hands down. But it's definitely the most triggering for Black parents raising Black kids.
Can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah. What can I say that's interesting? I'm in my mid 30s already. I'm one of two moms that are raising six kids. Yes, six. Um, I wish it was one, but two of our kids display AFCA behaviors. I don't know. Now that you're explaining it, I know what it is. I understand, but I wouldn't use that term to describe their behaviors. Maybe you can, I don't know, brainstorm or something different. But yeah, so that's kind of, I think, the information that you need to know about me as a parent. I do identify as Black. I'm biracial. I come from a multicultural, multi-religious, multi-fan family, and I was mostly raised by Black folks. That's why I think I strongly identify as Black. That's who I am.
You have an interesting perspective on what we want to talk about today. Can you tell us more?
Yes. So when I first heard about AFCA, what it was, like the research and everything around it, I was really intrigued, definitely, because it spoke to me as a parent and what I was experiencing. But it also didn't speak to me on some other aspects. And when I said identify as Black, it's for me it was a journey because I didn't always identify as Black. especially because I was raised in a mostly like Caribbean culture, but I'm mixed race, so of course it's half of my heritage. But I also grew up with people that came from Central Africa, West Africa, old French colonies. I'm from France. You will hear in my accent. And so all of those cultural expectations were very clear. And going through life, I had to realize that I was Black, like I identify as Black, because those culture had the most influence on me. And the expectation that I had as a parent, or the expectation that I have for my kids, when it comes to their behaviors, or who they are, is very much connected to those cultures. And this is where there's a tension, and it was difficult when people don't know what it is to be me as a parent, as a Black parent within a Black community, but also not understanding what it is to be outside of the community and what it means for Black parents raising Black children that can have difficult behaviors. Because yes, you're going to be judged about how they're acting, so this is a lot of pressure, but also how safe are they going to be outside of my home if they behave in that way, and like how are they going to be perceived, because it could be dangerous or threatening for them. It's very much difficult for that as a Black parent to know that. So pressure inside community and outside of the home, all of this is part of the Black experience as a parent.
Are you able to tell us about what AFCCA looks like in your home?
Yes, today, yes, not always. It's often difficult to talk about. I'm not at the point where it's shameful anymore, but I remember when it was, and I know it's hard for parents. For us at home, it looks a lot like something you can expect from a child that just cannot regulate their emotions, that are completely out of control and overwhelmed. Sometimes by big things, something that looks big, but sometimes for things that look very small to me or to you. But for them, it's just disproportionate, and the reaction is scary, pretty much. It's kicking, biting, scratching, throwing things, destroying things, punching holes in walls, like we do have holes in our home. They're not at the age where they will throw insults. They are verbally aggressive, but it's mostly with their words. And it can be also psychological threats, not at my kid's age, but I know that for other parents it looks like, threats threatening to hurt themselves or hurting someone else in the home. It can be emotional, the typical things that kids say, like, you don't like me, you don't love me, my parents. So that times like 100. Like I said, it's something that's scary and hurtful that can happen, and it's directed towards siblings, parents, sometimes pets. It's harsh and difficult, and it always leaves a scar, whether it's visible or not, actually.
How does your culture influence your approach to parenting?
That's a good question. I think that's a powerful question, because this is where I feel the most triggered, almost, because I had and I still have expectations for my kids' behaviors that come from the culture that I was surrounded by when I was growing up. Like I said, my mom is from the Caribbean, and I mostly grew up within a family, like with cousins and uncles and aunties around me. So this is where I learned what family looked like and what parenting looked like. So definitely this is what I'm used to, and this is what I wanted to do, because it looked like it worked well. Like, you want your kids to be well behaved, you want them to respect elders, for example. Like for me, respecting adults was a must. Like it was just how things were. That's all. Like, this is what I saw around me, this is how things are, and with nuances. I think it's not just I owe respect to adults. I think I need to respect them for very specific reasons and in a very mindful way. So that's different. Also, how you talk to adults, how you behave outside the home, because the way you behave reflects on your parents and your community. So if you're not well mannered, or if you don't behave well, then it reflects poorly on your parents. So that's also something you're not supposed to do. So that's what I was expecting to be a parent would look like. Like that's what I wanted. It worked. It seemed to work well because I think most of the people that I grew up with and my family, they're doing good people, they're polite, etc. So of course that's what I wanted as a parent, and that's still what I want as a parent. I'm not giving up on that at all. So I wanted to replicate what was good for me, and this is those culture that influenced me so much, and I saw as very positive. And what's outside of the community, because raising kids as a community is very powerful, and that's what you want, like having people around. I have 6 kids, so that's definitely what I wanted. And what was outside of the community seems so confusing. Like I didn't really get the advice or the parenting approaches that didn't seem to work that well, or just made me raise my eyebrows. Like why would you, what's the point, like what's the goal, like why would you accept this, like where are your boundaries, like all of the things. So I think models that came outside from my community seems very confusing or unclear, unnatural also to me, of course, when the ones that I grew up with were just there and I was used to them. So
You've talked about the aspects of the AFCA conversation that don't resonate with you. Could you tell us about the parts of the AFCA research and conversation that you do find helpful?
oh yes, I definitely remember when I came across AFCA. I started to read a little bit about it, but when I started like knowing more what you said about it, um, I think the first thing that came to mind is finally someone is talking about it. There's a conversation happening around it, and people are trying to look for solutions. Like that is huge because like AFCA, what you describe at AFCA, what I'm experiencing in my house is not talked about in my community. It's not easy to talk about it with anyone, but especially when you come from a community like mine. Um, it's also, there's a lot of shame around it. Like it's often feels like it's a failure of the parents, and often that's how people react to it. Um, it's very isolating. It's not something people want to be around, and um, and yeah, and there's a disconnect. It creates a disconnect. So just be willing to talk about it, finding ways to talk about it, being open, even with this today, like having an opportunity to share as the first step that I needed, and knowing that people are dedicated to it is very important. Also having like just looking for solutions, like envisioning a reality where there's practical things to do, there's new approaches that are grounded in, like you said, research, something that's tangible, like it's about the brain, it's about the body, like, you know, we are all very similar. That we need to acknowledge that the human experience, we all have common ways to react to trauma, for example, or to, you know, challenges. But then there's also specific things on top of it that comes from your culture, your background, etc. And that is a different aspect. So there's a need for adaptation for sure. But just knowing that there is solutions gives me the glimpse of hope that I needed. Like there's something I can do, and people are actually working on things that I can do to help my kids, to help me, to help my family, my community, to just work better together. I think that's the very interesting part of it.
What did you find particularly difficult about navigating AFCA that you think other families may be experiencing too?
It's just difficult first for any families that are experiencing this. Um, for any family, it's difficult to talk about it, to describe it, to find relevant resources or support. There's not much. That's also why it's interesting to have your program or having a conversation around AFCA, what you call AFCA. But specifically for our family, and I think for what I want to talk about for Black families, I think it is a different experience. I think there's different aspect to it, and what I wanted to share, I think, with other Black parents who are raising Black kids, or parents who are raising Black children, actually, it's navigating systems. I think that is the challenge. School is very difficult. Black kids are often seen as more violent, less well behaved. We know it's exaggerated, but the impact of harsher discipline, lack of support impacts more Black kids. So making sure that you have support, you have advocates with you, you are aware of the situation. One other thing that I think is important is make sure, and systemic racism is a reality everywhere in Canada, and knowing that, I think making sure that your child is seen as a human being, like they can see your child, making sure they know more than the behaviors, they know more about your child specifically, what your child likes, what are their typical behaviors, their qualities. Like really make sure that the positive, you share as much positive things as possible to offset kind of the behaviors, because people have a tendency to focus on the behaviors. And if they don't see your kids as a regular child, which unfortunately that's the impact of racism, then it's going to be even harder for you to navigate that. Health is the same thing. Like I think you should expect the best from people, but the reality is you never know who you're going to encounter, and so make sure you're ready to stand your ground. Like don't be afraid to be the difficult parent. You're not here to make friends. I learned that the hard way, and I think parents who are pushy and unapologetically on their kids' side, even you want to be polite, you want to be respectful. You don't want to be that parent who think their child has nothing wrong. I think you want to be the best ally of your children, and make sure you defend their needs. Regardless of what you have in front of you. I think that's very important. Parents who are pushy, like I said, and not afraid of conflicts, for example, are parents who get things done, to be honest. And I think the last aspect of it is finding ways to alleviate the isolation, the shame, anything that's not helpful. Like anything that doesn't help you be the parent you want to be, or to help your child, how your child needs, like everything that stands in your way that shouldn't be there, find ways to remove those challenges and the barriers so you can focus on what's important. I think shame, isolation, guilt are unavoidable. I think it's part of the journey, but they shouldn't be overwhelming to the point where you can help yourself, and then therefore you're unable to help your kids. I like to say that my kids are my priority, so I am my priority. Because if I'm doing well, they're doing well, better, exceptionally well, but so it's not pressure. I don't put pressure on myself. It's more I need to remember that if I want to show up for people, I need to show up for myself. I think that would be the advice I would give to parents.
Why did you want to make this video?
Like I said, I'm finally getting something that I needed, which is just having a conversation, talking about it, so it's not something that's hidden anymore. So having it out in the open, as intimidating as it is, it's also healing. Like, sometimes what's scary is not bad. Scary can be good, and finding the courage to do something that's scary is important. And I think if it can help other parents, I think that's what I wanted to do. Just talking about it. I think that's the first step. And it feels if it feels as good as it felt to me when I started hearing other people talking about it, I hope that's what I hope for this video. That's the impact that I wanted that video to have. But also sharing about the Black experience, the Black aspect of it, like being Black. What does it mean? On top of sharing the similar things with other families, I think on top of it, I really know, it's not a belief, I know that there's a different experience when you're Black parents of Black children. Because of my culture, the expectations, the community expectation, my own expectations, the goals that I have for my kids, like I do not want to compromise on things that I'm proud of and that I consider to be good. And there's a lot in my culture that I consider to be good. And regardless of what people say, even AFCCA, even if you tell me that something in my culture that we do is not good, that this is not taking into account something, blah, blah, blah. Like there's always a limit to what I'm going to accept. I understood my son when he was behaving with my grandmother. I understood why. I still don't accept the behaviors, and I never will. I understand why, but I will never accept that. And if anyone will tell me, like, you don't understand their brain, you just can't do it, I'm like, okay, I get it, but I don't. I still want him to meet my expectation when it comes to respecting elders. So no compromise on things, and I want parents to feel comfortable enough to say that too. Yet I'm going to disclose what I'm experiencing in my kids, difficult behaviors, and everything that's attached to it, but also I don't want to compromise on things that I want as a parent. I think it's totally fair, and that's part of the Black experience. That's mine, and that's other people that I know. The worry also, the safety aspect of it, those being Black parents, talking about AFCCA feeling vulnerable with professionals, for example. Like, how does it reflect on me as a parent? Like, I'm a Black mother. Of course, I'm going to be seen as more, it's going to be more negative. The impact is going to be more negative on me. I'm going to be seen as less skilled as a parent, like that I'm less able to control my kids. When other person, like the next person that comes in, like the blonde mom in Lululemon, is going to be seen like experiencing the same things, but not seen the same way. That's just my reality, definitely. So sharing part of the experience as a Black parent, like how we're seen by society, how we're seen by our community. So the pressure that is being put on us, our kids' behaviors, how they can be unsafe, because no one can support them, but also they're seen as more violent, as more aggressive, as more something they're not necessarily. I know that my daughter that is 9 has the emotional age of a 4-year-old, for example, but she's told like she's wearing size 14 for clothes. So there's a huge gap. So when she has something that looks like a tantrum to you, well, it looks worse than it actually is in reality. And so when you know that she's Black on top of it, then it becomes pretty scary as a parent that if she behaves like that outside of my home, like how safe is she? So all those worries are definitely part of the Black experience, being a parent of a child with displaced difficult behavior. And I think that is something that I've never heard before. It's something that I want to hear. I would like to hear other parents who are experiencing the same, because sometimes it does feel like it doesn't happen in my community. Like, this is not something, this is like other people thing. Like, this is other community thing. It's not our community thing. So that feels like I need to hide part of my life to fit in, and I don't want to do that anymore or ever. So I think, yeah, just hearing someone like me talk about something that's a little stigmatized and taboo in my community, I hope that it helps other parents feel less isolated and understood, because it's a huge part of finding support